Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Drawing with Mr. Sepulveda. I'm Mr. Sepulveda. In today's episode, I'm going to take my students' superhero project submissions and redraw them. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here is going to be the card right above here that you can click on to find out a little bit more about this. I'm going to use their stories and lore about their heroes' origins and their villains' origin stories as well within this redraw. If there's anything that you don't like, just blame me, because I had to retweak some of the stories, and if they submitted in a hero or a villain without a story, well, then I had to come up with it on my own. So without further ado, let's start our first story. David L. was a regular guy. Well, sort of. If you looked at him, you would think he was a regular guy. He was a 16-year-old freshman in high school who enjoyed playing sports, drawing, and listening to music. Sounds normal, right? Well, I'm leaving out something very important. David was born with a very rare gene. It was the Evo X gene. Unlike some individuals that need to ingest or come into physical contact with the mutagen X drug to awaken their dormant superpowers, or those that miraculously awaken their super abilities through chemical spills, David L. was born with superpowers. He was super strong. As a baby, he surprised his parents when he lifted a refrigerator looking for his pacifier. Some parents would have abandoned their child right there, but not the L family. They loved their baby boy and raised him to become a young man who sought to do good in the world. In his early teen years, David didn't have too much control over his abilities. Once when he was alone in the weight room, he accidentally dropped a dumbbell on his toe. He ended up getting angry and suddenly began to grow taller and more muscular than he had ever been. The growth continued until his head grew through the school roof. David tried to compose himself and calm down so he could rationally figure out a way to fix the problem before anyone else came to check up on the noise. The moment David cleared his mind, he was slowly going back down to his normal size. He realized then that he needed to train to gain full control over his abilities. Some time passed when a news report broke out on the television screen at Mrs. L's clothing alterations and cleaner shop. The city was being attacked by a kaiju-sized reptilian monster. David had this gut feeling that he was the only person in the city who could stop the kaiju. He had been practicing how to grow and how to utilize his super strength. This could be David's big moment. Before David could tell his mother what he was planning, his mother said, "I knew this day would come. Follow me." Mrs. L flipped her sign from open to closed and proceeded to push buttons on her cash register. Then the wall behind the counter began opening up into a secret room. David didn't know how to respond. He just followed his mother into the secret room. "I made you a costume, David. This costume has some incredibly unique qualities, one of which is to fit the wearer's body. The material is very elastic and has the potential to stretch to unknown lengths. I know you can expand your body size, so I figured this would help you. Before your father passed, he figured that it might be practical if he provided you with a way to travel through the air. David's father was an engineer and could create just about anything." David's eyes began to swell up with tears, thinking about how much his parents loved him and believed in him. David's mother presented him with an incredible-looking red and yellow costume. He picked up the mask, looked up at his mother, and said, "Thank you." Mrs. L said, "I've always known you were special. Now it's time for the world to see just how special my little muscular man can be." David put on the mask, the red and yellow tights, and a cape that had the capabilities of flight. "Before you leave to save the city, there's something I must tell you," said Mrs. L. "You see, you have one major weakness that we learned about when you were very young. If you use too much of your power too quickly, your muscles will begin to deteriorate. They will eventually grow back within 30 minutes, but I encourage you to use your powers wisely." "That is some major weakness. Thanks for letting me know. I'm off to save the city," David exclaimed. David flew to the city and quickly spotted the reptilian-looking kaiju. When he got a closer look, he noticed that the monster was very slimy-looking. Its body was completely green with yellow snake-like eyes. It noticed David and took a defensive stance and waited to see what David would do. David grew and headed towards the kaiju. Both David and the kaiju began swinging at each other. David with his fists and the kaiju with its long arms and tail. David noticed the damage and the city was sustaining and grabbed the monster by the waist and flew the both of them over the rocky mountainous region just outside the city limits. David was taking a lot of damage from the kaiju as he was trying to land in the area. David was growing angrier and began growing to a size larger than the kaiju. The monster was instantly paralyzed by the sight it was witnessing. David lifted his two mighty fists above his head and crashed them down upon the monster's head. Smash! The kaiju splattered all over the rocks. The helicopters overhead captured every moment of the fight. The roar of the citizens' cheers reached David. David was quickly approached by a news reporter. My name is Caleb Hill from the Channel 5 News. Please tell us who you are so we can properly thank you. David had a wide grin on his face. He was able to take out a large monster, save the city, and get recognition for it. David looked down at the logo his mother stitched on his shirt and looked up at the news reporter. My name is Muscular Man. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that story for our first superhero, Muscular Man. This was created by my student Ellison. I'm going to pop up the drawing that she submitted, which I think looks kind of cool, looks kind of fun, right? Ellison, I hope you really enjoy this redraw of your superhero Muscular Man. Hope you enjoyed the story. I used a lot of the story that you presented within your project. So, yeah, guys, let me know what you think down below. Our second story actually has two villains in it because I had a really tough time with picking just one. And this is actually the case for a few of the submissions that were turned in. So some of my future episodes within the series are going to involve more than one. So the story is actually a little bit lengthier. But regardless, I hope you still enjoy this story. The world has been changing over the past several months. It seems superheroes are popping up out of every city on the planet. Aileen Magique from London claims to be an alien witch from Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry. Insane, right? With the rise of heroes comes the rise of villains. In Spark City, Colorado, Rodrigo Reyes leads one of the largest underground weapons networks in the entire United States. His gang, the Sparkers, sold the illegal high-tech weapons to high school students, murderers, druggies. They would put the weapons in anyone's hands for the right price. Rodrigo is your typical kind of gang leader who leads through intimidation and fear. When his henchmen can't get the job done, he would put on his business suit. No, I don't mean a suit and tie. What I'm referring to is his supervillain costume. He wore a dark red suit that covered him from head to toe. The eyes were covered with a special gold-plated visor that reflected intense glares. The tips of his gloves were tipped with sharp bits of Metal X, one of the strongest known metals on the planet. To the civilians of Spark City, Rodrigo Reyes was better known as Nagato Nerve. One, because he had a weird obsession with an anime character from a popular series about ninjas, and because he desires to inflict pain onto others. Nagato enjoyed torturing his enemies slowly. It's said that when his enemies are screaming, you might be able to catch a rare occurrence of Nagato smiling. For months, the cops of Spark City have been searching for Nagato, but to no avail. Like anyone classified as a supervillain, Nagato had unique abilities. He has telepathy for starters, which allows him to read the minds of those in a one-block radius. This ability alone makes Nagato very dangerous. Whenever the cops came close enough to capturing him, it was all but too easy for him to leave unnoticed and evade the cops. This ability also helps him rule his henchmen with an iron fist, since there is nothing they can hide from his mind. As for his second ability, Nagato can shoot lightning from his body to incapacitate his enemies, as well as for propelling himself in any direction he wishes. The suit Nagato wears is designed to be heavily insulated to prevent his own electric abilities from hurting himself, like a certain aura user on the West Coast. 3 months ago, Spark City was facing some of its darkest days. The city went on a mandatory lockdown due to the number of individuals who were starting wars in the streets with the high-tech weapons Nagato's men had supplied. The property damage was through the roof. The number of injured civilians and those who had lost their lives rose in the hundreds. Luckily for Spark City, a hero rose to save them. The hero's name is Vulcanator. He wears very impressive mech armor, which allows him to fly and shoot thermal energy beams from his hands. Since Vulcanator's debut, Nagato's weapons business started tanking. The illegal high-tech weapons started getting removed from the streets, and crime started to decline 20%. Vulcanator started to become a thorn in Nagato's side, and he decided that he couldn't defeat the hero on his own, and he was going to have to put his pride aside and get some backup. Enter in Nagato's cousin, Ryan Blethen. Ryan was better known to the gang as Electress, the most electrifying woman in all of Spark City. Electress was beautiful as she was evil. Her dark sapphire eyes could pierce any man's heart and make him submit to her every desire. If someone was foolish enough to deny her wishes, she would simply need to use her neuronic power whip to put them under temporary paralysis. The whip had a unique electric charge that would interrupt the electrical impulses that the brain sent throughout the body. All she would need to do is make sure the needle-ended tip would penetrate the body. While under paralysis, the mind would operate fully being aware of what was happening around them and to them, but the body would be unable to move and respond. Electress enjoyed watching the fear of her enemies' faces as she began to inflict pain. Nagato and Electress teamed up to take down Vulcanator on the streets of Spark City. Nagato handled some long-range attacks with his lightning, as well as intercepted Vulcanator's thermal blast. Electress, using her agility and acrobatic skills that she developed as a professional gymnast, which is a story for another day, was easily able to close the distance, close the gap between her and Vulcanator. Electress used her neuronic power whip to strike Vulcanator. The electricity running through the whip was leaving the mech suit charred in areas. Vulcanator was seemingly unharmed otherwise. He flew into the air to gain the advantage, to gain the high ground. Nagato attempted to read Vulcanator's mind, but surprisingly, was unable to do so. He imagined it may have something to do with the hero's helmet. Nagato did what he could and propelled himself into the air by charging electricity through the lower half of his suit. Both Vulcanator and Nagato Nerve were in the air, clashing energy blasts that could be seen for miles throughout the city. Electress used her whip to assist her in scaling a nearby building, where she planned to get close enough to put Vulcanator under paralysis. Closing in on the distance, Electress jumped off the roof of the building, shooting her neuronic power whip directly at Vulcanator's spine. This, however, was a mistake. The moment the needle penetrated the armor, an unusual current ran down Electress's whip and into her body. This induced Electress with a stroke. Vulcanator didn't see what happened, but Nagato did, and immediately propelled himself to the falling villainess. Nagato caught Electress and placed her safely on the ground. When he was getting back up and turned to face the hero, he was met with a heavily metalled fist. Nagato's world was rocked, a huge splitting migraine pounding through his mind. His vision became blurred and he was quickly losing his footing. Nagato tried shooting lightning from his fists, but he had no control over his abilities, and his aim became wild. Vulcanator closed in quickly for one final punch to knock out the Crimson Villain. Both Nagato and Electress are currently residing in a Supermax facility where inhibitor chips are being used to negate their abilities. I would like to say this is the end of our story, but I would be lying to you, for the story of Nagato and Electress are far from over. Well, folks, I really hope you enjoyed the story of Nagato Nerve and Electress. Nagato Nerve was created by my student Lawson. I'm going to post up the picture of his submission right here. Okay, I think it looks pretty cool. Definitely very menacing, right? And our Electress was submitted in by my student Addison. And so here is that picture right here. I think she did an incredible job as well with her design for her character. I had a lot of fun, Lawson and Addison, with redrawing what you guys put out. I thought you had a lot of information in your pictures that I could use. I loved the abilities that you guys gave to your characters. Addie, I liked the way that you kind of gave her a whip or some sort of weapon to use to kind of use her abilities through. So I thought that was kind of fun. I thought it was unique. And so I really couldn't decide which one of yours to use. So I decided to use both. I really hope you guys like how the final product turns out. We'll be seeing that shortly. If you guys really like the artwork in this video, please go ahead and leave me a like down below. Comment down below which of these characters you like the most. Go ahead and praise the kids for the hard work that they did on this project. I think they really deserve it. They did a really great job. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can stay up to date with new art content and, of course, other videos like this. I'm definitely going to continue the series. I chose or attempted to choose, rather, 11 of my students' superhero designs to redraw, or supervillain designs to redraw. But just like this video, some of the future ones are going to have more than one in them because it's very difficult to kind of choose, because I think they're very creative and they worked really hard on this project. So if you don't make it in, kids, don't worry. It doesn't mean that yours was bad. I just had to choose the ones that I think would work best for like a video design, redraw, stuff like that. Okay. If you guys have any redraw submissions that you guys would like to turn in, go ahead and look at the link down below. Send it to my email in the description. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Tuesday in the next video. I'll let this one keep playing. You guys have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.